Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Coach Pappenheim, and welcome back to yet another Untamed production. Back at it again with the van. Shut the fuck up, you know what I mean. Today I come to you all humble, good-looking, not a penny in my pocket, grandfather of 24, give or take a few hundred, with the all-new, grand spanking new script from Untamed Productions. Let me ask you all out there in the audience, how many of you have ever witnessed death? Okay, yes, I see a few hands raised, very well. You may all be wondering, Cody, my dear, my chum, my long legs, my sugar plum, my financial beneficiary, how many deaths have you seen? And I'll be honest with you all, that's a hard question to answer, you see, when you're as old as me, as well as having killed, witnessed as many deaths as I have. That's a tough one. But if I had to take a guess, I'd say it's somewhere in the ballpark of 473 exactly, more or less. Anyway, that means I've dealt with body disposal, body pickup services on a number of occasions. And now, thanks to Untamed's newest script, you too can take on the role of an Undertaker and finally get the view from the other side. My nephew and newly contracted co-host Jimmy John Pappenheim will demonstrate as always on my behalf. Jimmy John is ready to start his brand new job as an Undertaker for the city of Valentine, and in no way is it court-ordered. They told us we legally had to say that. Jimmy John has already been assigned his role as an Undertaker. As such, he's prepared to begin with his shift. Before he gets to patrolling the main streets for bodies, however, he's got to build himself a few supplies. As an Undertaker, you'll have access to a small work area to craft all the tools you'll need to do your job. Jimmy John can craft 3 objects at his workstation: a coffin and a fancy coffin. Thirdly, he can craft himself a brand new workstation should some hooligan decide to come and wreck it. Damn kids these days. For the sake of demonstration, Jimmy John will build 2 regular coffins and 1 singular fancy coffin. Once he's got those stocked up in his unending void he calls his pockets, then he makes his way over to the gentleman in front of the church. Once he speaks with him, he will be given access to a hearse wagon, and his real work can begin. Jimmy John takes his work hearse and patrols around the town for bodies as if he's Rick Grimes trying to clean up the prison in Walking Dead Season 3. Does anyone remember that show? Damn, I missed The Walking Dead. That was good shit right there. However, they never should have killed Glenn. Those bastards, they knew what they were doing and they didn't kill. Once Jimmy John finds a body, he gets off the hearse. Approaches it. And lifts it up. He then throws that son of a bitch in the back of his hearse and goes on with his day, as any man should. While Jimmy John continues his work though, do take note of the detailing in the back. You can see the bodies underneath the top in the back of the hearse. By default, Untamed Gravekeeper's hearse can hold a total of 15 bodies. However, this can be configured to your liking. For each body placed into the hearse, the top will grow as a visual reminder of how many a player has in their hearse at that current time. Oh look, there's another body for old Jimmy John to snatch up. Wonderful! Keep up the good work, nephew! When Jimmy John decides to turn in for the day, or when his hearse is full, he'll need to take that body to a gravesite, which is marked on the Undertaker's compass by default. As always, this can be turned off in the config. Now, by default there is only 1 gravesite, beside the Valentine Church. Developers, however, can change this to their heart's content. Now, at the gravesite, Jimmy John approaches the back of the hearse. You eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed that there are now 2 prompts in the bottom right of the screen. An unloading prompt has now joined the loading prompt. Jimmy John chooses to unload a body. Keep in mind, only 1 body can and will be unloaded at once. Once he does so, he then takes it over to the gravesite exactly, opens up his inventory, and uses the regular coffin he prepared earlier. You know he's in the right spot and at a valid gravesite because coffins can only be used at a valid gravesite. He then buries the body. Upon completion of the burial, Jimmy John will receive his payment, cold hard cash. Now, for all you developers out there, know that payments can be configured to either be a static amount of money, or they can be on a fixed range, so that the Undertaker can earn an amount of money between a minimum and maximum payment that you deem appropriate. The choice is yours. Now, I'm sure you're all asking yourself, if that's what the regular coffin does, then what in the bloody hell is a fancy coffin for? Here to explain that right now, joining Jimmy John out in the field, our old friend Reginald DeWitt. Mr. DeWitt and I go back years. Fun fact, Reginald here has what some may call an illness. You see, he can't help himself at the blackjack tables. Reginald lost all his life savings on a few bad bets. But I, being the wonderful, charitable, brilliant, handsome, kind man I am, decided to help him out by giving him a loan of $200 with 500% interest. Frankly, I think that was more than a fair deal. But now the time has come to pay the piper, and Reginald seems to know what to pay.
Colt, can you hear me? Look, man, I told you I'll get you your money. You don't gotta do anything crazy.
Good work, my boy. Oh, I'm so proud of him. Alright, very well now, Jimmy John. Show the good folks watching what a fancy coffin is for, will you? Perfect. Excellent work, Jimmy John. In case you all haven't picked up on it, fancy coffins are used for player bodies. Player bodies cannot be put into a hearse, just to make that clear. So you'll need to bring your body to a gravesite all on your well own. We're lucky Mr. DeWitt was so reasonable as to bring himself to the gravesite all on his own accord. This feature is to serve as a PK, or player kill, in case you don't know. The player, whom finds themselves in the dirt, will find themselves respawning at the nearest train station to where they were buried upon completion of said burial. If you would not like this PK, or burial feature, implemented into your server, then you're in luck. This, like much of our other features, can be fully configured and thus turned off. Just remove the ability to craft fancy coffins and you're all good! Now that Jimmy John is done with his hard work, he returns the hearse to the man at the church. Upon returning it, Jimmy John is notified that any bodies remaining in the hearse when returned will despawn with it, asking Jimmy John to confirm this is what he means to do. Once he says yes, the hearse will be put away and Jimmy John can conclude his day. Speaking of the hearse man now, know that he too can be configured. You can configure if you'd like the NPC to spawn, or if you'd just like to have the prompt appear. The choice is yours. Lastly, we here at Untamed take resource management very seriously. As such, we've created a feature in this very script to only spawn the NPC model when a player is within its proximity. That way, when no one's around to notice the man, it's not eating up on your valuable resources. And on the off chance you would like to opt out of this feature, that too can be configured and turned off. We at Untamed take a great care to give our customers the most customization possible when it comes to what they'd like to do and offer on their servers. Because we can't be tamed and neither can you! I'm Colt Pappenheim and that's it for this video. Jimmy John looks took it out, like he may just fall asleep right at the graves himself. So with that, I suppose we'll be Oh my god! How the fuck does this keep happening? Jimmy John! I guess I should have said before, from the times of 11 p.m. all the way to 4 a.m., criminal scum may approach these solemn and sacred graves and do the unthinkable. They could rob them. All they'd need to do this heinous act is have a shovel in their inventory. They'd approach a valid gravesite, which is determined by the gravestone, and use their shovel to begin. Upon beginning to dig, they'll be given a skill check minigame. If they succeed, then they will receive an award. This can be money, items, or both. And as always, the quantity and or type of item can be full configured for you. If they're successful as well, a lantern will appear and brighten the area, acting as somewhat of a beacon and hint that there may be some foul play going on at that site. If they're not successful, however, then the grave robbers may just find themselves landing in deep doo-doo. Raccoons will burst from the ground and attack the thieves. The amount of raccoons and how much damage they do to the player is up to you as well. Just change it in the configs. Once the raccoons have been dealt with, assuming the thieves manage to survive just fine, their bodies will despawn in an effort to not clog up your resources. Should the criminals be of the impatient variety, there is one other way they could rob the local graves, though it is much more, let's say, theatrical. It's a lot noisier and as such much more likely to arouse the local authorities. The thieves could get a stick of dynamite, or whatever item you deem suitable in the config, and plant it on the grave site. They'll once again be given a skill check. If they fail, they'll have wasted time and be required to start over. If they succeed, though, well, as a wise man once said, boom goes the dynamite. The thieves get their loot and take off once again. And just so you all know, the amount of loot and the type of loot they can receive is, as always, fully configurable. We at Untamed Productions recommend to be on the higher end, however, since this is a riskier and louder way of conducting business. As such, it should have a higher reward in our humble opinion. But we'll leave the choice to you. A few other notes. The Untamed Gravekeeper script comes with a blacklist so that you may configure which jobs you want to disallow to rob graves. By default, only Undertakers are blacklisted from robbing graves. However, you can always choose to configure it so that lawmen, marshals, doctors, hell, maybe even the local postman can rob graves. If someone with a blacklisted role attempts to rob a grave, they will be given a notification. Which brings me to my next point. All notifications seen here can be configured as well. Next up, you can configure the alert percentage to your heart's desire, as well as assign who's alerted. By default, only Undertakers are alerted when graves are robbed, and they're alerted 100% of the time. The alerts can be turned off completely if that's more your style. Well, that just about wraps things up for me. Remember, Untamed Gravekeeper is available now on an interweb near you. We hope you enjoy, and remember, we can't be tamed and neither can you. God bless RedM.